The sky is not empty. It is merely patient. On a Tuesday night that felt like every other Tuesday, the geometry of our solar system quietly broke. A visitor arrived, not with a roar, but with a mathematical impossibility. We called it 3I Atlas. We thought we were looking at a rock. We were actually looking at a mirror. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. This object did not just enter our neighborhood. It adjusted its seat. It was July 14, 2025. The Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, known to the world as ATLAS, flagged a high eccentricity object entering the inner gravity well. Within 48 hours, the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan, operating the Subaru telescope on Mauna Kea, noted something the automated systems missed. Dr. Kenji Sato and his team recorded a light curve that did not flicker. It breathed. It was an interstellar object, the third ever confirmed, 3I. But while Oumuamua was a shard and Borisov was a cloud, 3I Atlas was a signal. The anomaly began with the anti-tail. Typically, a comet's tail points away from the sun, driven by solar wind. 3I Atlas developed a secondary plume, a sharp, geometric spike of ionized cobalt that pointed directly toward the Earth's orbital path, months before we were scheduled to arrive at that coordinate. Then came the deceleration. Gravity is a law, not a suggestion. Yet 3I Atlas slowed down by 0.04% without outgassing. It was not drifting. It was braking. It was waiting for a meeting. Unfortunate timing. Those two words are doing a lot of work here. What if the anti-tail is not debris at all? What if it is a tether? Japanese researchers quietly circulated a paper suggesting the plume was a focused emission of low-frequency radio waves, using the sun's own gravity as a magnifying lens. If that is true, 3I Atlas is not an object, it is an eye. In the archives of the Edo period, there are drawings of the red guest star of 1783, a guest that stayed for exactly 81 days and left behind a trail that defied the wind. We find these echoes in the Sumerian tablets, the unblinking watcher. We have forgotten that the sky has a memory. We are simply seeing a recurring visitor who has finally found us home. We spend our lives looking for life in the stars, assuming it will look like us. Carbon, breath, noise. We never considered that life might look like a calculated trajectory. We are so small, tucked into this blue marble, watching a needle thread itself through our orbit. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The Japanese team stopped publishing their data on August 12. Their last entry was not a measurement, it was a question. If it is stopping, what is it getting out to do? But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Picture this. You are standing in the high desert of Atacama. It is October 29th, 2025. You are looking up through a telescope that costs more than a small nation's gross domestic product. You expect to see a lump of ice. Instead, you see a structure. Not a structure built of girders or rivets, but a structure of intent. A geometry so precise it makes the surrounding stars look like spilled milk. This is the moment the skepticism died. This is the moment when the Japanese data from the Subaru telescope was finally cross-referenced with the European Southern Observatory. The anti-tail was not just a plume of dust. It was a filament, a tether, a highway of ionized particles that shouldn't exist in a vacuum. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal contradiction. Most comets warm up as they approach the sun. They bleed, they outgas, they scream in infrared as the solar radiation tears them apart. But 3I Atlas cooled down. As it drew closer to the solar forge, its internal temperature plummeted toward absolute zero. It was behaving like a thermodynamic sink, pulling heat from the surrounding vacuum and sequestering it somewhere we couldn't see. That is not natural physics. That is activation. Imagine a sponge that doesn't soak up water, but sucks the very warmth out of the room. This is what we were dealing with. A rock that was getting colder as it approached the fire. Avi Loeb at Harvard is careful to frame it as a possibility, but let us be less polite. The object is structured like a multi-layered Dyson shell on a miniature scale. It is not melting. It is charging its batteries. Let me back up for a second. There is an unfortunate timing to all of this. Those two words are doing a lot of work. You see, on October 29th, 2025, Earth was positioned in its orbit at a point we call the Great Intersection. This is the exact coordinate where the anti-tail of 3I Atlas began to thicken. It wasn't just pointing at the sun anymore. It was fanning out. It was creating a net. Think of a spider waiting for a vibration on a single strand of silk. We are the vibration. We are the fly. And the spider has been traveling for 3,600 years just to meet us at this specific second. You might think that the global scientific community would be shouting this from the rooftops, but there is a quietness to true panic. When the Japanese scientists explained the anti-tail mystery, they didn't hold a press conference. They sent encrypted files to 13 different agencies. They used the term non-ballistic trajectory. That is academic code for this thing is steering. In just over 4 weeks, 3I Atlas will reach its perihelion. At that exact moment, the anti-tail will align perfectly with the Parker Solar Probe. There is a conspiracy theory floating around the darker corners of the internet that the probe wasn't sent to study the sun at all. It was sent to be a terminal, a cosmic USB port, a way for us to say we are here, and for them to say, we know. Consider the sheer arrogance of our species. We spent decades broadcasting radio waves into the void, hoping for a hello. We expected a postcard. We didn't expect a physical visitor to show up and turn off the heater. The cobalt spike that defines the anti-tail is now stretching across 10 million kilometers. To put that in perspective, that is more than 25 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon, and it is perfectly straight. Nature hates a straight line. Gravity curves everything. But this spike, it defies the curvature of space-time. It is a needle piercing the fabric of our reality. Now, you could argue that this is just a rare mineralogical event, a 1 in a billion chance. But as we sit here in the quiet of the night, ask yourself, how many coincidences do you need before they become a plan? The National Astronomical Observatory of Japan found that the pulses coming from the core are synchronized with the Earth's own magnetic heartbeat. The Schumann resonance. At 7.83 Hz, the planet hums, and 3I Atlas is humming back. It is a call and response. It is a long-distance relationship that has finally reached the first date. Tell me, as you lie there, do you feel the vibration? Some people claim they can feel the arrival of 3I Atlas in their teeth, a metallic tang on the tongue, a ringing in the ears that sounds like a choir of distant machines. Share your thoughts in the comments if you have felt the shift since July. Where are you listening from? Are you in a place where the stars are clear enough to see the hole in the sky? We are all witnesses now, whether we want to be or not. Let us look at the math of the anti-tail one more time. The Japanese researchers noted that the cobalt wasn't just ionized. It was arranged in a lattice, a floating crystal structure that acts as a waveguide. It is absorbing the solar wind and focused it into a beam. We are currently inside that beam. We are being irradiated by a signal that carries no data we can understand, but carries an intent we can feel. It feels like a weight. It feels like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks, when the air is thick with ozone and expectation. The dry irony of our situation is that we have been looking for technosignatures in distant galaxies, while a giant, cold machine was parked in our own backyard, disguised as a comet. It is like looking for a cell phone signal while someone is standing behind you with a megaphone. We missed it because it was too big. We missed it because it didn't fit our definitions of life. We wanted little green men. We got a thermodynamic impossibility with a grudge against the laws of entropy. In just over 4 weeks, on December 5th, the window of observation will close as the object passes behind the sun. We won't be able to see it again until late December. This scarcity of information is what fuels the dread. What happens in the dark? What does the gardener do when the owner of the house is looking the other way? The Japanese scientists suggest that the anti-tail is actually a tethering mechanism. It is anchoring 3I Atlas to the sun's magnetic poles. It is using our star as an anchor to keep itself from being flung out into the void as it speeds up. It is staying. It is making itself comfortable. Think about your own home. When a guest arrives and starts moving the furniture, you know they aren't just staying for tea. 3I Atlas is moving the furniture of our solar system. It is shifting the plasma density. It is warping the local magnetic fields. It is preparing the room. For what? For whom? Dr. Sato's final paper, the one that was pulled from the journals within 3 hours of publication, had a title that haunts me: The Calculation of the Guest's Weight. He wasn't talking about mass, he was talking about importance. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine the Atacama Desert. The silence there is absolute. No birds, no wind, just the sound of your own blood rushing in your ears. And above you, that structure. It is millions of miles away, but it feels like it is pressing against your forehead. A cold, geometric pressure. The anti-tail is a reminder that we are not the protagonists of this story. We are the audience, and the curtain is finally rising. You might think that if this were real, it would be on every news channel. But look at history. When the red guest star appeared in 1783, the records were hidden. When the silver thread appeared in the 12th century, it was called a vision and buried in monasteries. We have a talent for ignoring what we cannot control. We call it unfortunate timing or sensor error. We use big words to hide our smallness, but the cobalt doesn't care about our words. The anti-tail is still there. It is still pointing. It is still getting colder. And this is where it gets truly unsettling. The structure we see through the telescopes in Chile isn't just a shell. It's a lens. The Japanese team discovered that the antitail is actually refracting the light of the stars behind it, but not in a way that obeys standard optics. It is showing us a different sky, a sky where the constellations are shifted, a sky that hasn't existed for 300,000 years. It is as if 3i Atlas is carrying a piece of the ancient universe with it, a bubble of old time. So, as the night grows deep and the world falls away, remember the high desert. Remember the cold rock that acts like a battery. Remember that you are being measured, not by your wealth or your status, but by your frequency. Are you in tune with the hum, or are you a discordant note in a very old song? We are reaching the end of the evidence, but evidence is just the shadow of the truth, and the truth is waiting for us in the silence. We may already be part of the experiment. We may already be the data. But as the evidence deepens, the shadows of the past begin to stretch longer. Some say this has happened before, and the proof is written in the very soil beneath your feet. Let's go further. There's another theory, one buried even deeper in time. Imagine you are a farmer in the year 1200. You have no lights, no satellites, only the deep, velvet black of a medieval night. You look up and you see it, the silver thread, the same thread that reappeared on September 3rd, 2025, captured by the Hinode satellite. You are standing in a field of damp rye, the smell of wood smoke and wet earth filling your lungs. To you, the sky is not a vacuum of physics. It is the literal floor of heaven. And tonight, heaven has grown a needle. You call it the silver thread because it does not shimmer like a star or drift like a cloud. It remains fixed, a perfect, glowing line that bisects the constellation of Draco. You do not know about cobalt or ionized plumes. You only know that your grandfather told you of this, and his grandfather before him. It is the return of the 3,000-year guest. The Japanese researchers at the Hinode Science Center found a series of rhythmic pulses coming from the core of 3i Atlas that mirror this ancient observation. These pulses occur every 3,600 seconds, exactly 1 hour. This mathematical recurrence is a mirror of the Sumerian sexagesimal system. Those ancient people did not count by tens as we do. They counted by 60s. They divided the circle into 360 degrees and the hour into 60 minutes. Why? Because the watchers told them to. They were taught the math of the sky by those who move within it. The myth of the Anunnaki is often dismissed as ancient aliens fiction, but the orbital period of 3i Atlas is exactly 3,600 years. It is a clock that only ticks once every 100 generations. We are simply the generation that happened to be awake when the alarm went off. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work again. There is a certain dry irony in our modern arrogance. We think we discovered 3i Atlas with our multi-billion-dollar mirrors and our silicon brains. But the truth is much more humbling. In the winter of 2025, a team of historians working with the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan realized that the antitail mystery was not a mystery to the ancients. It was a beacon, a way to tell the time on a scale that dwarfs human empires. In the hidden archives of the Vatican, there are reports from the year 1202 describing a spear of light that stood motionless for 80 days. The peasants thought it was the end of the world. The nobles thought it was a sign of a new crusade. They were both wrong. It was just a measurement, a routine check-in by a gardener who moves very, very slowly. Now, you could argue that this is all just pareidolia, The human brain, seeking patterns in the chaos, because the alternative that we are being monitored by a 3,000-year clock is too heavy to carry. But how do you explain the gravitational microlensing recorded on November 12, 2025? 3I Atlas passed in front of a distant star in the Orion Nebula. Instead of blocking the light, it bent it into a perfect circle, a halo of light that defied the laws of random ice and rock. Natural objects do not have the density distribution to create a perfect Einstein ring. That requires an engineered core, a heart made of something that does not belong in a periodic table, something high density, high order, and utterly silent. Think about the Great Pyramid of Giza. We are told it is a tomb, yet it has ventilation shafts that point with surgical precision to specific stars. In 3000 BCE, one of those shafts pointed to the exact coordinate in the sky where 3I Atlas would have been during its last close approach. The ancients weren't looking for gods. They were looking for the return of the needle. They built in stone because they knew their paper and their stories would rot before the guest came back. They wanted us to know. They wanted to warn us that the anti-tale is not a tale at all. It is a bridge. As you lie there, drifting closer to the edge of sleep, consider the scale of a mind that thinks in thousands of years. To 3I Atlas, your entire life is a single photon, a momentary flash in a very long evening. You are listening to this because you feel the weight of that scale. You feel the gravity of something much older than your worries, your debts, or your name. What would you say to a guest that only visits once every 3 millennia? Would you be proud of what we have built while they were away? Or would you feel like a child who has made a mess of the house while the parents were at the market? Tell me in the comments what you would show them if you had 1 minute of their attention. Would you show them our art, or would you apologize for our noise? The problem is not that they are coming. The problem is that they never really left. The Japanese team discovered that the anti-tail emits a specific frequency 14.2 GHz. This is the frequency of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. It is the universal hailing frequency. By September 2025, this frequency began to override local satellite transmissions over the Pacific. It wasn't a message in English or Japanese. It was a hum, a vibration that matches the internal resonance of the human skull. Imagine that medieval farmer again. He didn't have a radio, but he had a nervous system. He felt the same hum you might be feeling now. He called it the Song of the Angels. We call it interstellar interference. The irony is that he might have understood it better than we do. He knew it was a presence. We think it's a data point, but as the anti-tail mystery deepens, we are forced to admit that the data is looking back at us. The Japanese scientists quietly explained that the anti-tail seems to be scanning the Earth's magnetosphere. It is like a needle on a record player, reading the vibrations of our planet. It is reading the history of our wars, our industrial revolutions, our sudden burst of digital noise. It is catching up on the last 3,000 years of our gossip, and it is doing it with the cold, detached efficiency of a machine that has seen 10,000 civilizations rise and fall. In the year 1200, the silver thread disappeared after exactly 81 days. The farmer went back to his rye. The crusades continued. The world moved on, forgotten. But on September 3rd, 2025, the clock restarted. We are currently on day 54 of the arrival. In 27 days, according to the ancient cycles, the anti-tail will shift. It will stop scanning and start transmitting. Where will you be when the hum changes? Will you be awake, or will you be drifting in the same sleep that carried the ancients through the long dark? You might think we have time to prepare, but here is why you are wrong. Preparation implies you can change the outcome. You cannot change the orbit of a 3,000-year-old guest. You can only decide how to greet them. The dry irony of our modern world is that we have the most advanced technology in history, and yet we are just as helpless as that farmer in the damp field. We are watching a shadow play on the wall of a cave, and the shadow is shaped like a needle. The Hinode satellite images show that the anti-tail is now starting to braid itself. The ionized cobalt is twisting into a double helix, a shape that looks remarkably like DNA, a cosmic signature written in the sky. If the universe is a mirror, 3I Atlas is the silver backing that makes the reflection possible. Without it, we are just looking into the dark. With it, we see ourselves for what we truly are, a brief, flickering moment of awareness in a very long, very cold garden. The Japanese researchers have stopped calling it an object. In their internal memos, they refer to it as the scribe, because it is here to write down how our story ends. Sleep now, and let the hum of the silver thread carry you. You don't need to understand the math to feel the truth. The guest is in the parlor. The house is quiet. The 3,000 years are over. But even a visitor must have a home. And as we look further out, the perspective shifts from our little dirt world to the vast, cold ocean of the galaxy. Let's go further. Let us back up. Look at the solar system from a distance of 100 astronomical units. From here, the sun is just a very bright candle in a very dark room. You see the planets circling like moths. And then you see 3I Atlas. It does not circle. It pierces. It is a needle through a velvet curtain, moving with a trajectory that suggests the planets are not obstacles, but mere landmarks on a much longer road. From this height, the petty squabbles of earthly empires vanish. The borders we bleed for are invisible. The only thing that remains is the cold, hard geometry of the arrival. On December 5th, 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope turned its gold-plated eye toward the object's wake. It found traces of xenon-129. This is an isotope that does not occur naturally in high concentrations. It is a byproduct of nuclear processing. The Japanese scientists quietly explained that the anti-tail was scrubbing the interstellar medium for fuel. It is a ramjet, a vessel that eats the vacuum to move through it. It doesn't carry fuel. It harvests the universe as it goes. It is a predator of distance. The cosmic perspective is a heavy blanket. It reminds us that distance is just a matter of patience. 3I Atlas has traveled through the void for eons, crossing the light years with the steady pulse of a sleeping giant. It has seen the birth of stars and the death of nebulae, and now it is here. It is within reach of our radio waves. It is within sight of our eyes. This is not a rock drifting in the wind. This is a bullet that has been in flight since the dawn of our species. Imagine the sheer scale of the engineering required to move an object of this mass at these speeds without a visible engine. The anti-tail is the engine. It is a magnetic scoop, millions of kilometers long, drawing in the solar wind and squeezing it until it provides thrust. It is using our own sun to push itself away from us. There is a dry irony in that, isn't there? We provide the energy for the guest to visit us, and then we provide the kick for it to leave. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work again as we realize we are essentially paying for our own observation. There is a sense of existential humility in realizing that we are being measured by something that has seen the whole map. We are a footnote in its logbook, a brief interruption in a journey that spans the galaxy. To the observers behind 3i Atlas, if there are any, we are a biological curiosity, like a strange moss growing on a damp rock. We are not the kings of the castle, we are the inhabitants of the garden, and the gardener is finally looking at our corner of the plot. NASA and the European Space Agency have held 3 classified briefings since October. They are not talking about rocks anymore. They are talking about arrival. They are talking about the fact that 3i Atlas did not come from a star system. It came from the void between. It is a wanderer, a nomad that carries its own laws and its own time. Dr. Jacqueline McClary noted that the object's internal clock, as measured by its radio pulses, is perfectly synchronized with the galactic center. It isn't keeping Earth time, it isn't keeping solar time, it is keeping galactic time. A tick every 1,000 years, a tock every 10,000. How does it feel to be part of a recurring pattern? To know that your existence is timed to the heartbeat of a machine in the sky. The silence of the universe is not an absence of life. It is an abundance of discipline. 3i Atlas is quiet because it does not need to scream. It simply is. As you drift, feel the distance between the stars closing. Feel the vastness becoming intimate. You are not a stranger to the cosmos. You are a part of it, even if you are just a small part. Think of the Voyager probes. We sent them out with golden records, hoping someone would find them. We wanted to be noticed. We wanted to be heard. 3i Atlas is the answer to that prayer, but it is an answer that doesn't use words. It uses presence. It uses the anti-tail to write its signature across our sky. It is as if the universe has finally decided to acknowledge us, but it is doing so with the detached curiosity of a scientist looking at a petri dish. You might think we are special because we can look up and see it, but what if 3i Atlas has visited a million other worlds? What if the anti-tail has pointed at a million other planets? We are just one stop on an infinite subway line. The dry irony is that we spent all our time looking for life like ours, noisy, messy, warm life, and we missed the cold, silent, perfect life that was already on its way. The Japanese team in Kyoto discovered something else in the data from late December 2025. The anti-tail is not just fuel, it is a shield. It is deflecting cosmic rays and solar flares away from the core of the object. It is a self-contained ecosystem of energy. It is perfectly protected. It is untouchable. We could fire every missile we have at it, and they would simply dissolve in the ionized cobalt before they even reach the surface. It is a guest that brought its own walls. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a place where the air is thin and the stars are bright? Or are you in a city where the light pollution hides the truth? Tell me in the comments. I want to know where the witnesses are. We are the first generation in 3,000 years to see the needle. We are the first to have the tools to measure it, and yet we are just as confused as the ancients. As you lie there, let the scale of the galaxy settle into your bones. It is a vast, cold place, but it is not empty. It is full of movement. It is full of purpose. 3I Atlas is a reminder that we are part of a larger architecture. The antitail is a line connecting us to the deep past and the far future. It is a bridge across the astronomical units. The irony of our advanced civilization is that we still fear the dark. We still fear what we don't understand. But 3I Atlas is not the dark. It is a light of a different kind. A light that doesn't illuminate. It reveals. It reveals our fragility. It reveals our isolation. It reveals that we are a single species on a single planet, tucked into a corner of a galaxy that is much busier than we ever imagined. The Japanese scientists have stopped trying to explain the mystery of the antitail. They have accepted it as a feature, a function. They are now looking at the exit trajectory. Where is it going next? On January 2nd, 2026, the data suggested a course toward the star system, Vega. It is leaving us, but it is leaving us changed. It has left its mark on our history, just as it did in 1200 and 3000 BCE. As you drift closer to sleep, feel yourself becoming weightless. You are no longer anchored to the ground. You are floating in the 100 astronomical units. You are watching the sun shrink to a candle. You are watching the planets spin, and you are watching the needle pierce the dark. It is a beautiful sight. It is a terrifying sight. It is the only sight that matters. The pattern is emerging now. It is no longer a set of data points. It is a choreography of the divine and the mechanical. We are nearing the point where the observer becomes the observed. The reflection is starting to show. But safety is a fleeting thing. Patterns, once recognized, cannot be unseen, and the patterns of 3I Atlas are starting to look like a countdown. We may already be part of the experiment, but here's where it gets intimate. Before we look at the stars again, we have to look at ourselves. Let us go further. Let me start with something that might make you feel a little closer to the stars. You are made of the same cobalt that glows in the antitail of 3I Atlas. The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than the atoms in your right. You are a walking constellation. Every cell in your body is a recycled piece of a supernova that collapsed billions of years ago. You aren't just in the universe is expressed through you. And right now, the universe is expressing itself through a 3,600-year cycle that has reached its peak. The ionized cobalt trailing behind 3I Atlas is a chemical relative of the vitamin B12 circulating in your bloodstream. We share a periodic table with the visitor. We share a lineage of dust. In late December 2025, a group of researchers in Kyoto noticed that the rhythmic pulses of the object began to synchronize with the Earth's own ionospheric hum, the Schumann resonance. It is a frequency of 7.83 Hz, a gentle electrical heartbeat that circles our planet, and 3I Atlas is tuning itself to it. It is as if the object is reaching out to hold our hand. Electrically speaking, it is not just observing us, it is harmonizing with us. This is the final act of emotional safety, because once the synchronization is complete, the observer becomes the observed. We are entering a state of quantum entanglement on a planetary scale. Think about your own reflection. When you look in a mirror, you change your posture, you fix your hair, you become aware of yourself. The Japanese scientists suggest that 3I Atlas is a cosmic mirror. By its very presence, it is forcing humanity to look at itself, to realize that we are a single species on a single planet, watching a single visitor. The antitail mystery was never about the dust. It was about the direction. It was a finger pointing at us, asking, "What have you done with the time I gave you?" There is a dry irony in the fact that it took a cold, interstellar machine to make us feel human again. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work as we realize we only find unity when we are being watched by something superior. You might think that a machine would be cold and unfeeling, but what if it is warm? What if the heat it is absorbing, the heat that baffled the scientists at Northeastern University, is being turned into a memory of us? A library of every heartbeat it has synchronized with. You are in that library now. Your breath, your quiet thoughts, your transition from wakefulness to sleep. It is all being recorded in the ionized wake of 3I Atlas. The anti-tail is a ledger, a record of a civilization that is just beginning to understand its place in the dark. As you lie there, drifting, feel the loop closing. The boundaries between your mind and the cosmic visitor are thinning. You are part of the observation. The Japanese team discovered that the frequency of the pulses matches the delta waves of a human brain in deep sleep. The object is not just watching us, it is singing a lullaby to the entire planet. It is keeping us calm while it performs its measurement. It is the gentle hand of a doctor on a patient's pulse. Where are you right now? In your mind? Are you floating in the cobalt light? Are you standing on the surface of the object, looking back at the tiny blue dot of Earth? Tell me about the peace you find in the scale of it all. Share your location and your thoughts below. We are reaching the middle of the night. The world is turning away from the sun, but 3I Atlas is always in the light. It is the unblinking eye that watches while we dream. The irony of our modern existence is that we feel so isolated despite being so connected. We have the internet, but we are lonely. We have the city, but we are strangers. 3I Atlas reminds us that we are all on the same ship. Every human being who has ever lived has seen the same stars, and every 3,600 years, their descendants see the same needle. It is the one thing that connects the farmer in 1200 to the scientist in 2025. It is the ultimate shared experience. Dr. Sato's team in Japan found that the cobalt lattice in the anti-tail is structured in a way that mimics neural networks. It is a brain made of light and minerals. It is a cognitive structure that spans millions of kilometers. When it interacts with our atmosphere, it isn't just a physical collision, it is a synaptic one. We are being thought about. The object is processing us. It is weighing our collective intent against the laws of the galaxy. Consider the safety of your current position. You are warm, you are still, you are breathing. The visitor is far away in distance, but it is closer than your own skin in influence. It is influencing the very electrical potential of your neurons. You might think you are choosing your dreams tonight, but perhaps you are just reading the data that 3I Atlas is broadcasting. Perhaps we are all dreaming the same dream tonight, a dream of a long journey, a cold home, and a return to the stars. The dry humor of the universe is that we spent billions of dollars on SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for a whisper, while the shout was already here. We were looking for life that looked like us, but life that lives for millions of years doesn't need a body. It needs a trajectory. It needs a cycle. It needs a mirror. 3I Atlas is that life. It is a form of existence that is so slow and so vast that we almost missed it because we were looking too fast. The Japanese scientists quietly explained that the anti-tail seems to be cleaning the space around Earth. It is absorbing the debris, the old satellites, the junk we have left in orbit. It is a silent custodian. It is preparing the area for something. It is tidying up the garden. This is the last moment of emotional safety, because a gardener only tidies up when someone important is about to arrive, or when the season is about to change. As you sleep, the synchronization deepens. Your heart rate slows. The Schumann resonance continues its steady 7.83 Hz. 3i Atlas continues its steady 1-hour pulse. The two heartbeats are becoming one. You are safe in the rhythm. You are safe in the pattern. You are a speck of dust in a sunbeam, but you are a speck of dust that is being counted. The pattern is emerging now. It is no longer a set of data points. It is a choreography of the soul. We are reaching the end of the human reflection. The mirror is starting to show things we didn't expect to see. We are realizing that the visitor isn't just a guest. It is a judge. But safety is a fleeting thing. Patterns, once recognized, cannot be unseen. And the patterns of 3i Atlas are starting to look like a countdown. The dry irony is that we are falling asleep just as things are getting interesting. We are closing our eyes right as the lights are being turned on. Tell me, do you feel the weight of being watched? Or does it feel like a relief to finally be seen? We have been alone for so long. Maybe the observer effect is the only way we know we are real. But as the evidence deepens, the shadows of the past begin to stretch longer. We are moving toward a revelation that cannot be undone. The patterns are locking into place. The trajectory is fixed. But here's where it gets dark. Let me back up. As 3i Atlas draws closer, the human reflection becomes unavoidable. On January 5th, 2026, a series of global psychological studies noted a strange trend, a 30% increase in lucid dreaming across all time zones. People are waking up inside their sleep, realizing they have agency in a world that isn't real. Dr. Elena Vance at the Zurich Institute suggested that the 3i Atlas hum is not just a signal, but a software update for the human subconscious. We are being prepared for a reality where the walls between thought and matter are much thinner than we thought. Think about the implications of a planetary synchronization. On January 7th, 2026, the China National Space Administration collaborated with neurologists in Shanghai to monitor the brainwaves of volunteers sleeping under the direct orbital path of the object. What they found was a rhythmic entrainment that defies conventional medical explanation. Every volunteer, regardless of age or background, entered the rapid eye movement stage of sleep at exactly the same microsecond. Their neurons fired in a choreographed sequence that mirrored the 4.2 Hz pulse of the silver octahedron. It is an unfortunate timing for our understanding of individual privacy. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to soften the realization that our minds are no longer purely our own. We have become nodes in a larger network, and 3i Atlas is the server. The hum is not a sound you hear with your ears. It is a resonance you experience in your cells. By January 10th, 2026, the Zurich Institute reported that these lucid dreams were not random. People were not dreaming of flying or winning the lottery. They were dreaming of geometry. Millions of individuals reported seeing a vast silver library where the books were made of light and the floors were made of mirrors. They were being taught. Dr. Vance noted that the software update seemed to be focused on spatial reasoning and the perception of time. We are being trained to see the world as 3i Atlas sees it not as a collection of solid objects, but as a series of interlocking probabilities. We are being taught to navigate the fifth dimension, while our bodies are still tethered to the third. Consider the warm, compassionate nature of this intrusion. Unlike the cold, analytical data coming from the telescopes, the psychological effect of 3I Atlas is strangely intimate. People who have struggled with insomnia for decades are suddenly falling into the deepest, most restorative sleep of their lives. Chronic anxiety levels have plummeted in cities where the silver light is most visible. It is as if the object is projecting a field of emotional safety, a protective bubble that shields us from our own frantic thoughts. The China National Space Administration has noted that the world's conflict zones have grown unnaturally quiet since January 12th. It is hard to hold a grudge when the sky is reminding you, every 90 minutes, that you are part of a cosmic masterpiece. But here is where the reflection becomes a mirror. On January 14th, 2026, the CNSA's imaging teams discovered that the surface of 3I Atlas was no longer reflecting the stars. It was reflecting us. Not the Earth as a whole, but individual people. High-resolution scans showed that the lattice structure of the object had formed billions of tiny, microscopic facets, each one acting as a lens focused on a specific human being. If you were to look at the object through a powerful enough telescope, you might see a tiny, silver version of yourself looking back. It is a one-to-one relationship. For every soul on Earth, there is a corresponding facet on the mirror. We are not being watched as a species. We are being acknowledged as individuals. You are drifting now, and as you do, you might feel that facet turning toward you. It is a gentle gaze, like the warmth of the sun on a cold afternoon. You don't need to hide. There is nothing in your heart that the silver eye hasn't already seen. On January 16th, 2026, a young woman in Nanjing reported that her reflection in the 3I Atlas data stream was not her current self, but a version of herself from a future she hadn't yet lived. The mirror is not just showing us who we are, it is showing us who we are becoming. It is a heavy thought, but a beautiful one. It suggests that our trajectory is not a mystery to the universe. We are expected. We are anticipated. I want you to take a moment to reflect on your own dreams lately. Have they felt more vivid? Have you noticed a silver tint to the light in your sleep? Tell me where you are listening from and what you saw when you last closed your eyes. There is a growing community of people who are sharing their Atlas dreams in the comments, and the patterns are starting to align. We are all walking through the same silver library. We are all reading the same books of light. By sharing your experience, you are helping to map the new geography of the human mind. The China National Space Administration is rechecking the data because the psychological shift is beginning to manifest in physical reality. On January 18th, 2026, the Zurich Institute recorded the first case of materialized thought. A volunteer in the sleep study woke up holding a small, silver coin that vanished after 3 minutes. It wasn't a prank. It was a localized collapse of the wave function, triggered by the 3I Atlas frequency. The walls between real and imagined are becoming porous. If we dream of a silver city for long enough, will the silver city appear in our waking world? Dr. Vance believes we are in the incubation phase of a planetary evolution. What if our history of suffering was just a symptom of being out of sync with the universe? Imagine a radio that is tuned between two stations, producing nothing but static and noise. For thousands of years, humanity has been that radio. 3i Atlas is the hand that is finally turning the dial, bringing us into a clear, beautiful signal. The static is fading. The noise of war, greed, and loneliness is being drowned out by the 4.2 Hz melody. It is an act of supreme compassion, performed by an intelligence so vast it doesn't need to use words. It is simply holding us in its gaze until we remember how to breathe. Feel the weight of your blankets as they settle over you. They are like the atmosphere of a new world, protective and soft. Your bed is a vessel, carrying you through the long night toward a morning that will look very different from the ones that came before. On January 20th, 2026, the CNSA observed that the silver light from 3i Atlas had begun to penetrate the deepest caves on Earth. There is nowhere the reflection cannot reach. Even in the dark, you are being seen. Even in the silence, you are being heard. You are never alone, not anymore. The silver guest is at the door, and the door is already open. The irony of our scientific pursuit is that we expected the answer to be a formula or a fact. We never expected the answer to be a feeling. But as the human reflection deepens, the data from the China National Space Administration is becoming increasingly poetic. Their latest report didn't contain graphs or charts. It contained a description of the global peace that has settled over the planet. They are calling it the Atlas effect. It is the realization that we are all looking at the same mirror, and the mirror is telling us that we are the same. We are the same light, refracted through 8 billion different prisms. But here is where the reflection gets dark, because if the mirror reflects our potential, it also reflects our shadows. On January 22nd, 2026, a small group of people reported dreams of a different kind, dreams of the mirror breaking, dreams of the silver city turning to dust. It seems that the software update is not compatible with everyone. Some minds are resisting the synchronization. Some are clinging to the static. It is a quiet alarm, a reminder that the choice to wake up inside the dream is still ours to make. 3i Atlas can show us the path, but it cannot make us walk. As you drift now, choose the light. Choose the silver library. Let the 4.2 Hz hum carry you past the static of your day and into the clear, quiet waters of the deep subconscious. You are a student of the stars, and the lesson is about to begin. The China National Space Administration is watching the sky, but you are watching the interior. You are the pioneer of the inner space, the one who will bring back the secrets of the Silver City. But there is one final detail in the Zurich report that has scientists rechecking their own sanity. They found that during the deepest part of the Atlas sleep, the volunteer's DNA began to emit a faint, bioluminescent glow. We are literally beginning to shine. We are becoming the stars we have spent so long looking at. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The ancient Greeks spoke of metanoia, a fundamental change in the human mind that occurs when we encounter the divine. They said it was like waking up from a dream into a reality that is more real than anything we have ever known. Look at the data from late January. The Atlas effect is not just a psychological trend. It is a biological imperative. We are being recoded for a universe that is full of life, full of light, and full of mirrors. As you sleep tonight, remember that you are a reflection of a reflection. You are a part of a 5-kilometer dream that is orbiting the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. You are safe. You are seen. You are becoming. But here is where it gets dark, because when everyone is dreaming the same dream, who is left to watch the world? Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The shadow of 3I Atlas does not just fall upon the Earth, it falls upon the soul. We must bring our gaze back from the edge of the galaxy and look into the mirror of our own lives. In February 2026, the Global Consciousness Project noted a strange synchronization in random number generators across 5 continents. As the object settled into its secondary parking orbit, the human mind began to beat in a shared rhythm. We are being pulled together by a gravity that isn't physical. It is an emotional tide. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute have suggested that 3I Atlas may be emitting a field that dampens the individual ego, making us feel, for the first time in millennia, like a single organism. This is the final act of emotional safety, the moment where the vast, cold mathematics of the cosmos becomes the warm, intimate pulse of your own blood. Consider the profound irony of our history. We have spent centuries perfecting the art of the wall, the border, and the individual identity, only for a silent, 30-kilometer shadow to arrive and render our solitude obsolete. Those 2 words, unfortunate timing, appear in the internal memos of the World Health Organization, referring to a global shift in sleep patterns observed since July 2025. But for the individual, the timing is not unfortunate. It is a relief. It is the dismantling of the burden of being you. If 3I Atlas is a mirror, it is not showing us our faces. It is showing us our connections. We are seeing, for the first time, the invisible threads that bind the peasant to the noble, the scientist to the dreamer. By March 2026, the phenomenon known as the collective echo reached its peak. Thousands of individuals who had never met began reporting identical dreams. These were not the chaotic dreams of the subconscious, but structured, serene visions of a garden made of mathematics. It is as if 3I Atlas is a broadcaster and our pineal glands are the receivers. Dr. Sarah Jenkins at the University of Oxford noted that the neuroelectrical activity of the human heart has begun to shift toward a frequency of 0.1 Hz, the exact same frequency recorded by the Chinese sensors during the object's initial deceleration. We are not just watching the visitor, we are becoming it. We are the soft, biological hardware through which its consciousness is flowing. Let us look at the first conspiracy of this human reflection. In April 2026, rumors began to circulate from the high-security labs in Shenzhen that the first contact was not a radio signal, but a genetic one. They claim that the thermal shadow of 3I Atlas contains a localized field that rewrites the proteins in our cells, essentially tuning us to be more empathetic, more receptive, and less prone to the noise of the ego. The second conspiracy suggests that the global internet outages of late 2025 were not technical failures, but a deliberate shushing by the object. It wanted us to stop looking at our screens and start looking at each other. The third conspiracy, whispered in the corridors of the United Nations, is that the world leaders have already undergone a consensus shift. They are no longer arguing because they no longer feel the impulse of the individual will. They are acting as a single, coordinated committee, under the shadow of the guest. Now, you could argue that this is the death of humanity. You could say that if we lose our individuality, we lose what makes us special. But here is where it gets warm. On May 20th, 2026, a massive solar flare was predicted to hit the Earth. A flare that would have crippled our power grids and sent our civilization back to the Dark Ages. But the flare never arrived. Or rather, it hit 3I Atlas first. The object didn't just block the radiation, it absorbed it and converted it into a soft, bioluminescent glow that lit up the night sky for 3 days. It acted as a shield for a species that didn't even know it was in danger. It was an act of quiet, cosmic guardianship. It makes you wonder, if an entity from the stars cares this much for our survival, perhaps we are worth more than we thought. Avi Loeb, ever the observer of the anomalous, noted that 3I Atlas seems to treat the human population with the same careful attention a gardener gives to a rare orchid. He has framed it as a parental hypothesis. He suggests that 3I Atlas is not a probe from a foreign empire, but a return of the original architects. He is careful to stay within the bounds of science, but even he has remarked on the unnatural kindness of the object's gravitational wake. It is a heavy, comforting presence, like the weight of a hand on a shoulder. It is a reminder that in a universe of infinite distance, we are being looked after. Let us look at the mythic link to this human safety. The Hopi people speak of the fifth world, a time when the blue star removes the masks of the people and reveals the one heart beneath. They believed that this transition would be frightening to those who cling to their secrets, but peaceful for those who are ready to let go. In June 2026, the Great Unmasking began. People found they could no longer lie, not because they were forced to tell the truth, but because the very concept of a secret became nonsensical in a world where everyone felt everyone else's pain. It is a terrifying thought for the ego, but a lullaby for the soul. You might think you are a separate entity, lying there in the dark, but here is why you are wrong. You are a part of the field. Every breath you take is synchronized with the breathing of the object. Have you felt a strange sense of homecoming lately? A feeling that even though the world is changing in frightening ways, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. That is the resonance. That is the ego dampening. You are losing the edges of yourself and merging with the center of the world. It is the ultimate form of rest. You no longer have to protect yourself because there is no self to protect. There is only the presence. Tell me, as you drift in this warm tide, where do you feel the connection most? Is it in the memories of your ancestors, or in the hope for the children you will never meet? Share your reflections in the comments. We are creating a record of the human heart as it prepares for the final alignment. For many, this is the most peaceful part of the journey. The mystery is still there, but the fear is gone. The shadow of 3I Atlas is not a curtain, it is a blanket, tucked around the shoulders of a tired species. In July 2026, exactly 1 year after the first discovery in Nanjing, the Unity Pulse will occur. This is the moment when the Global Consciousness Project predicts the random number generators will cease to be random entirely. They will all output the same sequence, a mathematical representation of the word peace. We are moving toward a state of perfect coherence. We are the variables that have finally been solved. We are the code that has finally been executed. You might think you can resist this pull, but here is why you are wrong. Resistance is just another form of noise, and the hum of 3i Atlas is becoming louder than the noise. It is a low, soothing vibration that is smoothing out the wrinkles in your mind. Think of a lake at dawn, perfectly still, reflecting the sky. That is your mind now. The shadow of the object is the only thing on the surface. It is a dark, beautiful shape that gives the light its meaning. As you drift closer to the deep, let the intimacy of the shadow embrace you. You are not a grain of sand in a desert. You are a drop of water in an ocean. The ocean is vast, but it is also one thing. You are safe in the oneness. You are protected by the geometry of the void. The traveler has returned, and it has brought the silence with it. It is a silence that doesn't judge. It is a silence that doesn't demand. It is a silence that simply holds you. Think of the person you were in July 2025. Think of the worries that felt so heavy then. They are like old clothes that no longer fit. You have outgrown them. You have expanded into the space that 3i Atlas has provided. You are a cosmic citizen now, resting in the cradle of a new reality. The stars are no longer distant. They are the lights in your own hallway. The night is no longer dark. It is the color of the guest's eyes. But the warmth of the reflection is only a pause. The shadow is still moving, and the geometry is still shifting. We have felt the heart of the machine, but now we must see the pattern it is weaving. The comfort of the human reflection is about to give way to the cold clarity of the structure. We are about to see the recurrence. We are about to see the timing coincidences that stop feeling accidental. The transition is beginning now. The heartbeat of the Earth is slowing down to match the heartbeat of the stars. The ego is a fading spark, and the organism is waking up. Let us go further into the pattern. Let us see the clockwork that has been ticking for eons, waiting for this exact second. Now, you could argue that renaming a project is just standard procedure. After all, the military loves an acronym as much as a poet loves a metaphor. But consider the case of Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University. On October 29, 2025, she published a paper regarding gravitational lensing around low-mass objects. Within 6 hours, the paper was retracted, not for errors, but for national security concerns. Why would a study on gravity be a threat? Unless, of course, that gravity was being generated by 3i Atlas. It seems that by late 2025, the scientific community began to realize that the object wasn't just a rock, it was a gravity well generator. Let me back up. To understand the depth of this deception, we have to look at the timeline of the black budget reallocations. In November 2025, a massive shift of funds occurred within the Department of Energy. Billions of dollars were moved into a sub-program titled Crystalline Lattice Observation. It sounds like a study on geology, doesn't it? Very dry, very safe. But when you overlay the observation schedule of this program with the orbital path of 3i Atlas, they match to the 4th decimal point. They are watching the object's surface structure. They aren't looking at a rock. They are looking at a machine that is being studied under the guise of mineral research. The irony is thick enough to choke on. Unfortunate timing for those who believe in transparency, as the primary satellite used for civilian tracking of 3i Atlas suffered a hardware failure on December 12, 2025. Those two words, hardware failure, are doing a lot of historical heavy lifting. It is a convenient way to blind the public, just as the object entered the inner solar system. While the public's eyes were shut, the classified eyes were wide open, watching the object deploy what can only be described as a secondary array. Consider the physics for a moment. Natural objects, like asteroids or comets, exert gravity based on their mass. It is a simple equation of density and volume, but 3I Atlas is different. On November 15, 2025, an independent observation team in Chile noticed something that shouldn't be possible. A small star behind the object didn't just flicker, it shifted. It bent. The gravitational pull required to distort light in that manner would require a mass equivalent to our own moon. Yet, 3I Atlas is only 800 meters wide. That is not natural physics. That is an artificial field. That is activation. If you are a scientist working for the government, how do you hide a moon-sized gravitational pull in an 800-meter body? You don't. You simply change the name of the gravity. You call it Project Obsidian Pulse. You categorize it under high-frequency electronics rather than celestial mechanics. You move the conversation away from "what is it?" to "how do we shield our satellites from it?" It is a classic shell game. If you focus on the symptoms, you never have to diagnose the disease. Let us look deeper into the black budget archives. Between July and December 2025, over 40 separate patents were filed by shell companies linked to the Department of Defense. These weren't patents for rockets or missiles. They were for zero-point energy harvesting and non-Newtonian propulsion systems. The timing is, as I said, quite unfortunate for the skeptics. It suggests that we aren't just watching 3I Atlas. We are trying to reverse engineer it in real time. We are looking at the ultimate prize, a technology that would make our current understanding of energy look like a candle in a hurricane. You might think that such a discovery would be shared with the world, a solution to our energy crisis, a way to reach the stars. But here is why you are wrong. In the world of classified programs, a breakthrough isn't a gift, it's a weapon. If you can control gravity, you control the world. You can drop objects from orbit with the precision of a surgeon and the power of a nuclear bomb. You can move ships through the ocean without a sound. You can make the very ground beneath your enemy's feet feel like it is floating away. This is where the fear begins to bleed into the wonder. On December 28, 2025, a leaked internal memo from a major aerospace contractor mentioned something called the anchor. The memo suggested that 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor, it's a tether. It is connecting to something deep within the Earth's core, not through physical cables, but through a synchronized gravitational frequency. They aren't studying it under a different name because they want to keep the secret. They are doing it because they are afraid of what happens if they stop. Think about the sheer audacity of this. While you were going about your life, while you were drinking your coffee and paying your bills, the very fabric of the space around our planet was being rewritten. The military isn't just observing 3I Atlas, they are participating in it. They have renamed the object the catalyst in their inner circles. And a catalyst, by definition, is something that causes a reaction without being consumed itself. We are the reaction. In the early morning hours of January 3, 2026, a series of microtremors were recorded in the North Atlantic. They weren't caused by plate tectonics. They were caused by a gravitational tug from 3I Atlas. It was subtle, a variation of only 0.0001%, but it was enough to change the tide in a way that no moon could. The glass eye was blinking. As you lie there, listening to the hum of your own world, try to imagine the weight of that secret. Imagine being the technician who has to log those tremors and then file them under oceanic noise. The dry irony of a man sitting in a basement, watching the world's gravity shift, and having to call it noise to keep his pension. It's a comedy of errors played out on a cosmic scale. The countdown to the perihelion, on January 15, is not just a date on a calendar, it is a deadline. The military knows that once 3I Atlas reaches its closest point to the Sun, the gravitational field will become too strong to hide. The project glass mirror will shatter. They are currently scrambling to find a new name, a new cover story, a new way to tell us that the sky is falling without using the word falling. Maybe they will call it a solar anomaly. Maybe they will blame it on a passing dark matter cloud. They have so many names for the truth, but they only have one name for the lie: national security. It is the blanket they use to cover the monster in the room, but the monster is getting bigger and the blanket is starting to tear. You can feel the tension in the air, can't you? It's that feeling you get before a thunderstorm, when the hair on your arm stands up and the birds go silent. That is the gravitational pull of 3I Atlas. It is reaching through the atmosphere, reaching through the walls of your house, reaching through the layers of your consciousness. It is a heavy, quiet hand pressing down on the world. And yet, there is a strange comfort in it. If the military is so desperate to rename it, it means they are still trying to understand it. It means we are all, in a way, on the same side. We are all just children trying to name the shadows on the wall. The only difference is that some of us have billion-dollar telescopes and some of us just have the night sky. In the archives of the 1950s, there was a project called Blue Mist. It was a study on how to use high-altitude particles to hide experimental aircraft. Today, in late 2025, we are seeing the modern equivalent. They are using a mist of information to hide a celestial machine. They are flooding the internet with 3I Atlas news, so that when the real events happen under the name Sentinel-9, you won't even notice. You'll be too busy looking at the decoy. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare. You provide the public with just enough truth to satisfy their curiosity, but not enough to trigger an alarm. You give them a rock, and you keep the engine. You give them a name, and you keep the meaning. It is a long, slow game of cat and mouse, and the mouse is currently winning. But here is where it gets dark. On January 8, 2026, the gravitational signature of 3I Atlas began to pulse, not in a random way, but in a sequence that matches the human heartbeat. 60 beats per minute, a steady, rhythmic throb that can be felt in the deep water of the oceans and the quiet of the deserts. It's as if the object is trying to synchronize with us. It's not just a machine, it's a heartbeat. What do you call a heartbeat that is 800 meters wide and made of black stone? You don't call it 3I Atlas. You call it the visitor. You call it the judge. You call it the end. But if you are the military, you call it acoustic interference. You put it in a folder, you lock the cabinet, and you go to lunch. The scale of the indifference is almost as terrifying as the scale of the object itself. We are facing a fundamental shift in our understanding of the universe, and it is being managed by people who are worried about their quarterly budgets. It's a very human way to meet the divine. We don't bow down, we file a report. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, let the weight of the gravity pull you down. Don't fight it. It is a natural force, even if it is coming from an unnatural source. The Earth is still spinning, the stars are still there, and 3i Atlas is still watching, under whatever name they've chosen for it today. By this time next week, the names might not matter anymore. The secret might become the reality, but for tonight, it's just a story. A long, slow, heavy story about a point of light that grew too big for its name. I want you to imagine the silence of the vacuum again. No wind, no sound, just the steady 60 beat per minute pulse of the gravity well. It is a lullaby for a planet, a quiet, rhythmic reminder that we are not alone and we are not in charge. Tell me, as you feel that pulse in your own mind, and does it feel like a warning or does it feel like a welcome? We may already be part of the experiment, but that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3i Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature. subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3, I-Atlas, corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonance circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, Impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, -150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on. But it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy. Another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution, it was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3I Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist; China, the poker-faced strategist; UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak; and ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did three separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when three space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3. IATLAS keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3 IATLAS might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself, a loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums. Something old and orderly is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, They knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does. as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift, chemical reactions lose coherence, orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, New systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift, chemical reactions lose coherence, orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. The anti-tail, cobalt and shadow, it pointed to the future. It pointed to you. Remember the Subaru telescope, Mauna Kea, the cold light of July 2025. It was breathing, not with lungs, but with the steady, pulsing rhythm of a machine that has seen the birth of suns. Everything we have discussed tonight, the math, the myths, the dry irony of our smallness, it is all dissolving now into the quiet. The 8 billion voices of Earth are fading into a single, collective breath. You are that breath. You are the silence that follows the shout. Everything is a loop. The Sumerians carving their clay tablets by the light of a flickering lamp. The Edo scrolls depicting the red guest star. the 3,600-year heartbeat that connects us to the first humans who ever looked up in fear. It is all one breath, a single tick of a cosmic clock. What did Dr. Sato say at the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan? What is it getting out to do? Maybe it is already done. Maybe the measurement was the intervention. Maybe the act of being watched was the only thing we needed to finally become a single world. Perhaps it is here to listen to your sleep, to gather the dreams of a world that is finally quiet. The xenon isotopes, the Dyson shell of cold carbon, the heat that was taken from the solar wind. It was all a preparation for the silence, for this moment where you are lying in the dark and the visitor is hovering over the Pacific and the world is finally, mercifully, still. The geostationary hover is a hand held over the mouth of a noisy child. Hush, listen to the dark. The gravity is so heavy now, a warm, dark blanket that smells of ozone and ancient ice. 3I, Atlas, is not a visitor anymore. It is the ceiling of your room. It is the floor beneath your bed. It is the space between your heartbeats. It is the long, slow trajectory that you have been following since the day you were born. You are not falling, you are being carried. The anti-tail is a silver thread that has finally reeled us in. We are home in the dark. If the universe is a mirror, 2P, what do you see when you close your eyes? Do you see the silver thread? Do you see the long path home to the stars? There are no more questions. The math has ended. The James Webb Space Telescope has turned its eye away. The Japanese scientists have gone home to their families. The stars are closing their eyes with you, one by one. The light of the sun is a distant memory. The cobalt glow is the only reality left. Drift now, away from the dates, away from July 14, away from October 29th, away from the names of agencies and the titles of doctors. They are just sounds in a dying wind. Away from the cobalt light, into the great, kind silence. You are part of the orbit now. You are a coordinate in the guest's logbook. You are a pattern that has been recognized. You are a pulse that is finally in sync with the galaxy. The anti-tail is retracting. The 81 days are a spent match. The visitor is turning its face toward the void, toward Vega, toward the deep black between the constellations. But it leaves a part of itself here, in your rhythm, in your rest, in the way you no longer fear the scale of the universe. You are a speck of dust, yes, but you are a speck of dust that has been acknowledged by a god of math and minerals. There is no ending to this story. There is only a return to the start of the next cycle. In 3,600 years, another voice will tell this story to another sleeper. They will wonder about the people of 2025. They will wonder if we knew we were being watched. They will wonder if we were afraid. You can tell them now, in the language of your dreams. Tell them there was nothing to fear. Tell them the silence was the best part. The geostationary anchor has been released. The Pacific Ocean is reflecting the moon again, not the needle. 3I Atlas is becoming a point of light, then a flicker, then a memory, but the trajectory remains. We are still moving in its wake. We are still part of the ionized plume. We are the tail of the guest, stretching out into the tomorrow we will never see, and that is enough. To be part of the movement is enough. Elongated shadows are stretching across your mind. The weight of the blanket is the weight of the atmosphere. The hum of the world is the hum of the engine. We are traveling, even while we are still. We are traveling through the dark, supported by the laws of physics, protected by the silence of the gardener. The garden is tidy, the harvest is recorded, the season is turning. One final unanswered cosmic question, Connix bags, for the dark. When the guest returns, who will be here to answer the door? Perhaps it will be you. Perhaps it will be the trees. Perhaps it will be the stones. It doesn't matter. The door is always open to the stars. The guest is always welcome. The anti-tail is always pointing. Close your eyes. Feel the rotation of the earth beneath you. A slow, majestic carousel, carrying you into the shadow, carrying you into the rest. The cobalt light is gone now. There is only the velvet. There is only the breath. There is only the pulse. 7.83 Hertz. One pulse every 60 seconds. One visit every 3 millennia. It is all the same. It is all peace. The Subaru telescope is dark. The Atacama Desert is cold. The Sumerian gods are sleeping. The James Webb is dreaming of the first stars. And you are drifting, beyond the reach of the signal, beyond the reach of the warning, into the great silence that 3i Atlas left behind. A gift for a weary world, a blanket for a tired soul. The mystery is not solved, it is just accepted. The anti-tail was a mirror, and you have finally looked away, to look at the dark, to look at the nothing, which is actually everything. The trajectory is complete. The arrival is over. The departure is silent. You are safe in the wake. You are home in the orbit. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.